Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we are going to have an introduction to gouache paints and some tips for beginners. So if you don't know what gouache paints are, gouache is basically opaque watercolors. They are water based and they have a different consistency than watercolors but work with water. We are using Winsor & Newton designer gouache paints here for this video. These are the best quality in the market right now and are recommended for experts, but we are trying them out today in this video. For the base, you're going to need a watercolor paper pad, which is not very finely grained but not also very plain, which absorbs water nicely. This paper is really good quality paper. So we are going to see how gouache paints behaves when we use a watercolor sheet. You can even use a wooden texture or even a multimedia paper. Gouache paint is very versatile and works on many surfaces. Since it's water based, it pretty much works on anything. This paper we are using here is finely textured and is perfect for any kind of watercolor or gouache paintings. Let's look at what kind of brushes we can use to work with gouache paint. You can use flat brushes or angled brushes. These are amazing to create your base. You can use some premium brands or you can even use basic brands. It doesn't really matter. The technique can be developed as you grow, but my recommendation would be to use flat brushes and round brushes because both are helpful when it comes to creating different kinds of patterns or designs, and both work pretty well with gouache. Next, you're going to need some water and some paper cups to pour the water in, as this is the same as using watercolors. One glass to clean your brushes and the other one to clean it even more before you put your brush in any color. We are also going to need some masking tape to create frames and palette to mix the colors. I highly recommend using a palette and not using the colors directly on paper because it can get messy, and if you want more control on your artwork or your paper, you should always use a palette. So let's begin. So the first thing we are doing is understanding how gouache paints behaves. So to begin with, we can add a little bit of water to the paint to make it even and consistent to be applied on the paper, but we avoid using too much water in gouache paint because it's water based and it can be dissolved and can lose its opacity. So before applying on the paper, make sure that you don't use too much water into it. As you apply the paint on the paper, this is how it looks. It's really opaque and gives a really nice matte finish when dried. We usually tend to add more and more water to even out the paint, but make sure you don't go on adding water because it can lose its opacity. In the second box, I am creating a gradient using white paint. So the beauty of gouache paint is you're always going to get consistent texture on the paper, and this is how you can create a gradient using 2 or more colors. The third behavior that I really think is important before you start painting with gouache is you have to wait for the paint to dry completely when you're trying to use another color next to it, because gouache paints dry pretty slowly, and if you are not patient enough, the colors can smudge and not give you a nice finish or a nice edge if you're trying to create a design over the paint. The beauty about gouache paint is that you can paint over another layer, but you have to wait for the first layer to dry completely and then paint on it. We are going to see the behavior of wet paint and dry paint here. So for example, if you want to draw lines or any patterns, if you don't wait for the base to dry completely, this is how your second layer is going to merge into the base, because both the paints are wet right now and you have very less control over your design and you can't go over and over again. So instead of that, if you just be patient and wait for the first layer to dry out completely, this is how smooth your design or the second layer can be. You can pretty much create anything you want in the second layer, and the base paint doesn't get activated unless you go over and over in the same direction in the same place. The fourth tip and something to keep in mind about gouache paints is that the dark colors dry to be light and the light colors dry to be dark. So we have used black paint here, and then we are using a very light paint to see how they dry out to be. So right now you can see the black paint is pretty dark, but when it dries it becomes very light in color, and if you activate some paint with water, you can see the original wet form of it was pretty different than the way it looks when it's dry. So black was darker and the pink was lighter when wet. Keep these things in mind when you're deciding your palette or trying to achieve a certain color using gouache paint. That's it for now. I hope these tips help you to begin your journey with gouache paints. So that's it for this video. I hope this video was helpful and it excites you to try gouache paints again. If you want to buy any of the art supplies that you see in this video, please check them out on our website. And if you recreate or create anything using gouache paints, do tag us in your artworks on Instagram. Comment down below what would you like to see next, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.